All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. So, let's settle in. Let's get comfortable. Let's grab a drink, grab a chair, and let's cozy up to a old friend of a book. Because tonight we are returning to Treasure Island. Welcome back. So, this is our second night of reading Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. The first night, we got through, well, all of part one. The backdrop has been laid. The inherited inn, well, not quite inherited, his mom's still around, but the inn that really was the opening setting. The captain, well, not really a captain, but the discovery of the map, and the idea that maybe it's time for an adventure. And yeah, this is our second book with a great Muppet adaptation, and it's also, yet again, we're reading something with a very unfortunate side plot. The B plot on this one being that, sadly, the world lost Tim Curry this week. I promise it wasn't our fault. But we can continue and enjoy and remember his performance in the Muppet adaptation of Treasure Island with a little bit of a send-off of our own. It's one of those unfortunate coincidences. This one had a bit of a confluence of coincidences. There's the new adaptation that's in the works by Ridley Scott of Treasure Island. There's the passing of Tim Curry, who did a fantastic job in the Muppet Treasure Island. Just strange how things all sort of line up like that. It's probably not anything more than just a coincidence, but it always feels more significant than it is, you know? Ah, well. So, I'm not sure how long this part 2 is, actually. Let's see, looking at it. Part 1 was about 50 pages-ish. Part 2 is pretty close, so we might be able to just knock out part 2 tonight and have that be our breaking point. This is very conveniently paced, almost like it was meant to be enjoyed in reasonably length sittings. Crazy, crazy. But yes, absolutely, I'll be pulling up the Muppets Treasure Island before too terribly long. I remember watching it in theaters way back in the day, and it was just good. I mean, what's not to love about a Muppet movie? Let's be real. And there were a couple really good ones around that time. I mean, there's the two that everyone thinks of, the Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island. And then there was a couple TV series with Muppets that were outside of their traditional theater setting. So, really just a good time all around. You can be forgiven for that. It's not nearly as bad as people like to make it out to be. It's not the best of the Treasure Island adaptations, but it's probably not the worst. Probably. Right? All right. Let's go ahead and slide on into our reading corner, and let's see where the evening will take us. I'd like to get through part 2 tonight, and I don't think that's going to be too much of a stress. That is true. There was a stretch there where Disney did do beautiful animation. The plotting and casting sometimes could suffer some, but there's the classic Disney style that went very well, and then there's the post-90s, well, I guess the 90s style was iconic as well, because you had Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and things like that fit in there very nicely. And there's that awkward stage where they were experimenting and pushing CGI into things that had no business having CGI. And then once they got past that little bit of growing pains, they found their rhythm again. I think they just were spoiled by, or they tasted that sweet opium of the success of Toy Story. Yeah. They set them all up fairly because they're pivoting into live action. That is absolutely true. And that's something a lot of their stories end up falling into, is a love/action story, because you need to interest the little boys and little girls, I guess. So, go to the old formulas that have worked since the 50s or something. Disney's got issues, alright? Alright, so. You know what? They're both right. The live action Disney stuff is actually criminal. They need to stop that shit. I don't think they've ever had a good one. Stick to your roots. I know when they were pushing like the 101 Dalmatians live adaptation or live action movies, it's like, no, stop it. And then whatever the hell the Lion King ones were, where it was like not live action but styled to look like live action. Ugh. Actual painful. All right. Let's pretend that we're being serious here for a moment and get back into our reading, shall we? Because we can just complain about the death of Disney all night long. It's not what it was when we were children. And that's, I don't know how much of that is rose-tinted goggles and how much is just the way it is. But that's not why we're here. Not this time, anyway. For now. Eventually, we'll probably read something that had a prime Disney adaptation, and we'll have the ripe comparisons. Maybe we should pull out some, like, Brothers Grimm and things down the line. That's an idea. Huh. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to Treasure Island. And with Part 2, The Sea Cook. Chapter 7. I Go to Bristol. And a reminder, as if we needed it, this is a fantastic edition of this book, with all of the original illustrations and illuminations at the start of the chapters. It's just, it's such a surprise when we find a great digital version like this. Alright. It was longer than the squire imagined ere we were ready for the sea, and none of our first plans, not even Dr. Livesey's, of keeping me beside him, could be carried out as we intended. The doctor had to go to London for a physician to take charge of his practice, the squire was hard at work at Bristol, and I lived on at the Hall, under the charge of old Redruth, the gamekeeper, almost a prisoner, but full of sea dreams and the most charming anticipations of strange islands and adventures. I brooded by the hour together over the map, all the details of which I well remembered. Sitting by the fire in the housekeeper's room, I approached that island in my fancy. From every possible direction, I explored every acre of its surface. I climbed 1,000 times to that tall hill they call the Spyglass, and from its and from the top enjoyed the most wonderful and changing prospects. Sometimes the isle was thick with savages with whom we fought, sometimes full of dangerous animals that hunted us, but in all my fancies nothing occurred to me so strange and tragic as our actual adventures. So the weeks passed on, till one fine day there came a letter addressed to Dr. Livesey, with this addition, to be opened, in the case of his absence, by Tom Redruth, or young Hawkins. Obeying this order we found, or rather I found, for the gamekeeper was a poor hand at reading anything but print, the following important news. Old Anchor Inn, Bristol, March 1st, 17... Dear Livesey, As I do not know whether you are at the Hall or still in London, I send this double to both places. The ship is bought and fitted. She lies at anchor, ready for sea. You never imagined a sweeter schooner. A child, my sailor. 200 tons. Name, Hispaniola. I got her through my old friend Blandly, who has proved himself throughout the most surprising trump. The admirable fellow literally slaved in my interest, and so, I may say, did everyone in Bristol, as soon as they got wind of the port we sailed for. Treasure, I mean. Redruth, said I, interrupting the letter. Hey, Arcane, welcome in. Dr. Livesey will not like that. The squire's been talking after all. Well, who's a better right? Growled the gamekeeper. Pretty run and go if the squire ain't to talk for Dr. Livesey, I should think. And that I gave up all attempts at commentary and read straight on. Blandly himself found the Hispaniola, and by the most admirable management got her for the merest trifle. There's a class of men in Bristol monstrously prejudiced against Blandly. They go the length of declaring that this honest creature would do anything for money. That the Hispaniola belonged to him, and that he sold it to me absurdly high. The most transparent calumnies. None of them dare, however, to deny the merits of the ship. So far, there was not a hitch. The workpeople, to be sure, riggers and whatnot, were most annoyingly slow. But time cured that. It was the crew that troubled me. I wished a round score of men, in case of natives, buccaneers, or the odious French. Ah, the Brits. And I had the worry of the deuce himself to find so much as half a dozen, till the most remarkable stroke of fortune brought me the very man that I required. I was standing on the dock when, by the merest accident, I fell in talk with him. I found he was an old sailor, kept a public house, knew all the seafaring men in Bristol, had lost his health ashore, and wanted a good berth as cook to get to sea again. He had hobbled down there that morning, he said, to get a smell of the salt. I was monstrously touched. So would you have been, and, out of pure pity, I engaged him on the spot to be the ship's cook. Long John Silver, he is called, and has lost a leg, but that I regarded as a recommendation, since he lost it in his country's service, under the immortal Hawk. He has no pension, Livesey. Imagine the abominable age we live in. Yes, imagine. An abominable age with no one getting pensions. Well, sir, I thought I had only found a cook, but it was a crew I had discovered. Between Silver and myself, we got together in a few days a company of the toughest old salts imaginable. Not pretty to look at, but fellows, by their faces, of the most indomitable spirit. I declare we could fight a frigate. Long John even got rid of 2 out of the 6 or 7 I had already engaged. He showed me in a moment that they were just the sort of freshwater swabs we had to fear in an adventure of importance. I am in the most magnificent health and spirits, eating like a bull, sleeping like a tree, and I shall not enjoy a moment till I hear my old tarpaulins tramping round the capstan. Seaward ho! Hang the treasure! It's the glory of the sea that has turned my head. So now, Livesey, come post. Do not lose an hour if you respect me. Let young Hawkins go at once to see his mother, with Redruth for a guard, and then both come, full speed to Bristol. John Trelawney. A postscript. I did not tell you that Blandly, who, by the way, is to send a consort after us if we don't turn up by the end of August, had found an admirable fellow for a sailing master. A stiff man, which I regret, but in all other respects a treasure. Long John Silver unearthed a very competent man for a mate. A man named Arrow. I have a boatswain who pipes. Livesey, so things shall go man-o'-war fashion on board the good ship Hispaniola. I forgot to tell you that Silver is a man of substance. I know of my own knowledge that he has a banker's account, which has never been overdrawn. He leaves his wife to manage the inn, and as she is a woman of color, a pair of old bachelors like you and I may be excused for guessing that it is the wife, quite as much as the health, that sends him back to roving. Excuse me? Robert, Can we have a heart-to-heart here, Mr. Stevenson? For real? Postscript. Hawkins may stay one night with his mother. Oh yes, how generous, one night. You can fancy the excitement into which that letter put me. I was half beside myself with glee, and if ever I despised man, it was old Tom Redruth, who could do nothing but grumble and lament. Any of the under-gameskeepers would gladly have changed places with him, but such was not the squire's pleasure, and the squire's pleasure was like law among them all. Nobody but old Redruth would have dared so much as even to grumble. The next morning he and I set out on foot for the Admiral Benbow. There I found my mother in good health and spirits. The captain, who had so long been cause of so much discomfort, was gone, where the wicked ceased from troubling. The squire had had everything repaired, and the public rooms and the sign repainted, and had added some furniture. Above all, a beautiful armchair for mother in the bar. He had found her a boy as an apprentice also, so that she should not want help while I was gone. It was on seeing that boy that I understood, for the first time, my situation. I had thought up to that moment of the adventures before me, not at all of the home I was leaving. And now, at sight of this clumsy stranger, who was to stay here at my place beside my mother, I had my first attack of tears. I'm afraid I lied. I led that boy a dog's life, for as he was new to the work, I had 100 opportunities of setting him right and putting him down, and I was not slow to profit by them. The night passed, and the next day, after dinner, Redruth and I were afoot again, and on the road. I said goodbye to mother and the cove where I had lived since I was born, the cove. And the dear old Admiral Benbow, since he was repainted, no longer quite so dear. One of my last thoughts was of the captain, who had so often strode along the beach with his cocked hat, his saber-cut cheek, and his old brass telescope. Next moment we had turned the corner, and my home was out of sight. The mail picked us up about dusk at the Royal George on the Heath. I was wedged in between Redruth and a stout old gentleman, and in spite of the swift motion and the cold night air, must have dozed a great deal from the very first, and then slept like a log uphill and down dale through stage after stage. For when I awakened at last, it was by a punch in the ribs. I opened my eyes to find that we were standing still before a large building in a city street, and that the day had already broken a long time. "Where are we?" I asked. "Bristol," said Tom. "Get down." Mr. Trelawney had taken up his residence at an inn far down the docks to superintend the work upon the schooner. Thither we had now to walk, and our way, to my great delight, lay along the quays and beside the great multitude of ships of all sizes and rigs and nations. In one, sailors were singing at their work. In another, there were men aloft high over my head, hanging to the threads that seemed no thicker than a spider's. Though I had lived by the shore all my life, I seemed never to have been near the sea till then. The smell of tar and salt was something new. I saw the most wonderful figureheads that had all been far over the ocean. I saw besides many old sailors with rings in their ears and whiskers curled in ringlets and tarry pigtails, and their swaggering, clumsy sea walk, and if I had seen as many kings or archbishops, I could not have been more delighted. And I was going to sea myself, to sea in a schooner, with a piping boatswain and a pigtailed singing seaman, to sea, bound for an unknown island, and to seek for buried treasure. While I was still in this delightful dream, we came suddenly in front of a large inn, and met Squire Trelawney, all dressed out like a sea officer, in stout blue cloth, coming out of the door with a smile on his face and a capital imitation of a sailor's walk. "Here you are," he cried, "and the doctor came last night from London. Bravo! The ship's company complete." "Oh, sir," cried I, "when do we sail?" "Sail!" says he. "We sail tomorrow." All right, so we've seen the introduction of a few key characters, at least by reputation here, and the tearful parting of the boy and his mother as he leaves the inn. He's been mostly a captive for a while, but having a night away, or a night together last time before he's off on adventure. It does seem that poor Trelawney is in over his head, though. And he's had things just fall into his lap and things taken care of for him, but that's not a good way to get through life. You gotta have a little bit of agency yourself, right? Yeah. We'll see how long that takes to bite him. So, continuing on with Chapter 8, The Sign of the Spyglass. When I had done breakfasting, the squire gave me a note addressed to John Silver, at the Sign of the Spyglass, and told me I should easily find the place by following the line of the docks, and keeping a bright lookout for a little tavern with a large brass telescope for sign, I set off, overjoyed at this opportunity to see some more of the ships and seamen, and picked my way among a great crowd of people in carts and bales, for the dock was now at its busiest, until I found the tavern in question. It was a bright enough little place of entertainment. The sign was newly painted, the windows had neat red curtains, the floor was cleanly sanded. There was a street on each side and an open door on both, which made the large, low room pretty clear to see in spite of clouds of tobacco smoke. Customers were mostly seafaring men, and they talked so loudly that I hung at the door, almost afraid to enter. As I was waiting, a man came out of the side room, and at a glance I was sure he must be Long John. His left leg was cut off, close by the hip, and under the left shoulder he carried a crutch, which he managed with wonderful dexterity, hopping about it like a bird. He was very tall and strong, with a face as big as a ham, plain, pale, but intelligent and smiling. Indeed, he seemed in the most cheerful spirits, whistling as he moved about among the tables, with a merry word or a slap on the shoulder for the more favored of his guests. Now, to tell you the truth, from the very first mention of Long John in Squire Trelawney's letter, I had taken a fear in my mind that he might prove to be the very one-legged sailor whom I had watched for so long at the old Benbow. But one look at the man before me was enough. I had seen the captain and Black Dog and the blind man Pew, and I thought I knew what a buccaneer was like. A very different creature, according to me, from this clean and pleasant-tempered landlord. I plucked up courage at once, crossed the threshold, and walked right up to the man where he stood, propped on his crutch, talking to a customer. "Mr. Silver, sir?" I asked, holding out the note. "Yes, my lad," said he. "Such is my name, be sure. And who may you be?" And then, as he saw the squire's letter, he seemed to give me something almost like a start. "Ah," said he, quite loud, and offering his hand. "I see. You are our new cabin boy. Pleased I am to see you." And he took my hand in his large, firm grasp. Just then, one of the customers at the far side rose suddenly and made for the door. It was close by him, and he was out in the street in a moment. But his hurry had attracted my notice, and I recognized him at a glance. It was the tallow-faced man, wanting 2 fingers, who had come first to the Admiral Benbow. Why do I keep trying to sliding that into Admirable? Blech. "Oh!" I cried. "Stop him! It's Black Dog!" "I don't care 2 coppers who he is," cried Silver, "but he hasn't paid his score. Harry, run and catch him." One of the others, who was nearest the door, leaped up and started in pursuit. If he were Admiral Hawk, he shall pay his score," cried Silver, and then, relinquishing my hand, "Who'd you say he was?" he asked. "Black... what?" "Dog, sir," said I. "Has Mr. Trelawney not told you of the buccaneers? He was one of them." "So," cried Silver, "in my house. Ben, run and help Harry. One of those swabs, was he? Was that you drinking with him, Morgan? Step up here." The man whom he had called Morgan. An old, gray-haired, mahogany-faced sailor came forward pretty sheepishly, rolling his quid. "Now, Morgan," said Long John very sternly, "you never clapped your eyes on that black dog before, did you now?" "Not I, sir," said Morgan with a salute. "You didn't know his name, did you?" "No, sir." "My the powers, Tom Morgan, it's as good for you," exclaimed the landlord. "If you had been mixed up with the like of that, you would never have put another foot in my house. You may lay to that. And what was he talking to you?" "I don't really know, sir," answered Morgan. "You call that a head on your shoulders or blessed dead eye?" cried Long John. "Don't rightly know, do you? Don't you? Perhaps you don't rightly know who you were speaking to, perhaps? Now, what was he saying? Voyages, captains, ships, pipe up! What was it?" "He was talking to keel hauling," answered Morgan. "Keel hauling, was he? A mighty suitable thing, too, and you may lay to that. Get back to your place for a lubber, Tom." And then, as Morgan rolled back to his seat, Silver added to me in a confidential whisper that was very flattering, as I thought. "He's quite an honest man, Tom Morgan, only stupid. And now," he ran on again aloud, "let's see. Black Dog? Nah, I don't know the name. Not I. Yet I kind of think, yes, I've seen the swab. Used to come here, the blind beggar used." "That he did. You may be sure," said I. "I knew that blind man, too. His name was Pew." Is that week? Hanging out on top of the computer? Yeah, good girl. "It was!" cried Silver, now quite excited. "Phew! That was his name for certain. He looked like a shark, he did. If we run down this Black Dog now, there'll be news for Captain Trelawney. Ben's a good runner. Few seamen run better than Ben. He should run him down, hand over hand by the powers. He talked to keel hauling, did he? I'll keel haul him." All the time he was jerking out these phrases, he was stumping up and down the tavern on his crutch, slapping tables with his hand and giving such a show of excitement as would have convinced an Old Bailey judge or a Bow Street runner. My suspicions had been thoroughly reawakened on finding Black Dog at the spyglass, and I watched the cook narrowly. But he was too deep, and too ready, and too clever for me. And by the time the two men had come back out of breath and confessed they had lost the track in a crowd and been scolded like thieves, I would have gone bail for the innocence of Long John Silver. "See here now, Hawkins," said he. "Here's a blessed hard thing on a man like me, now, ain't it? There's Captain Trelawney. What's he to think? Here, I have this confounded son of a Dutchman sitting in my own house drinking of my own rum. Here he comes and tells me of a plane, and here I let him give us all the slip before my blessed deadlights. Now, Hawkins, you do me justice with the captain. You're a lad, you are. But you're as smart as paint. I see that when you first come in. Now, here it is. What could I do with this old timber I hobble on? When I was an A.B. Master Mariner, I'd have come up alongside of him, hand over hand, or broached him in a brace of old shapes. I would. But now..." And then, all of a sudden, he stopped, and his jaw dropped as though he had remembered something. "The score!" he burst out. 3 goes of rum. Oh, I shiver my timbers if he hadn't gotten my score. And falling on a bench, he laughed until the tears ran down his cheeks. I could not help joining, and we laughed together, peal after peal, until the tavern rang again. "What a precious old sea calf I am," he said at last, wiping his cheeks. "You and me should get on well, Hawkins. For I'll take my Davy I should be rated ship's boy. Come now, stand by to go about. This won't do. Duty is duty, messmates. I'll put on my old cockerel hat and step along with you and Captain Trelawney and report this here affair. But mind you, it's serious, young Hawkins. Neither you nor me's come out of it with what I should make so bold as to call credit. Nor you neither, says you, not smart. None of the pair of us smart, but dash my buttons, that was a good one about my score." And he began to laugh again, and that so heartily that, though I did not see the joke as he did, I was again obliged to join him in his mirth. On our little walk along the quays, he made himself the most interesting companion. telling me about the different ships that we passed by, their rig, tonnage, and nationality, explaining the work that was going forward, how one was discharging, another taking in cargo, and a third making ready for sea. And every now and then telling me some little anecdote of ships or seamen, or repeating a nautical phrase till I had learned it perfectly. I began to see that here was one of the best possible shipmates. When we got to the inn, the squire and Dr. Livesey were seated together, finishing a quart of ale with a toast in it, before they should go aboard the schooner on a visit of inspection. Long John told the story from first to last with a great deal of spirit and the most perfect truth. "That was how it were now, weren't it, Hawkins?" he would say, now and again, and I could always bear him entirely out. The two gentlemen regretted that Black Dog had got away, but we all agreed there was nothing to be done. And after he had been complimented, Long John took up his crutch and departed. "All hands aboard by 4 this afternoon!" shouted the squire after him. "Ah, sir!" cried the cook in the passage. "Well, squire," said Dr. Livesey, "I don't put much faith in your discoveries, as a general thing, but I will say this. John Silver suits me." "The man's a perfect trump," declared the squire. "And now," added the doctor, "Jim may come on board with us, may he not?" "To be sure he may," says Squire. "Take your hat, Hawkins, and we'll see the ship." All right, so we've met Long John Silver, and there's, well, I guess he is a cook after all. Maybe not frying up some, well, you know what, actually, if he's a ship's cook, probably of similar quality than we're familiar with. Maybe not quite fry it up and such, but probably suspect fish. Let's be real. So, maybe he's a little bit more familiar than we thought. All right, let's continue on, because this adventure is about to get underway. You know what? That is fair. Someone has to try and make the ship's biscuits edible. Otherwise, they're basically rocks that are vaguely flavored of flour and weevils. So, there's that. All right, Chapter 9. Powder and Arms. The Hispaniola lay some way out, and we went under the figureheads and round the sterns of many other ships, and their cables sometimes grated underneath our keel, and sometimes swung above us. At last, however, we got alongside, and were met and saluted as we stepped aboard by the mate, Mr. Arrow, a brown old sailor with earrings in his ears and a squint. He and the squire were very thick and friendly, but I soon observed that things were not the same between Mr. Trelawney and the captain. This last was a sharp-looking man, who seemed angry with everything on board and was soon to tell us why, for we had hardly got down into the cabin when a sailor followed us. Captain Smollett, sir, axing to speak with you," said he. "I am always at the captain's orders. Show him in," said the squire. The captain, who was close behind his messenger, entered at once and shut the door behind him. "Well, Captain Smollett, what have you to say? Well, Captain Smollett, what have you to say? All well, I hope? All ship-shape and seaworthy?" "Well, sir," said the captain, "better speak plain. I believe, even at risk of offence, I don't like this cruise. I don't like the men. And I don't like my officer. That's short and sweet." "Perhaps, sir, you don't like the ship?" inquired the squire, very angry, as I could see. "I can't speak to that, sir, not having seen her tried," said the captain. "She seems a clever craft. More I can't say." "Possibly, sir, you may not like your employer either," says the squire. But here Dr. Livesey cut in. "Stay a bit," said he. "Stay a bit. No use of such questions as that, but to produce ill feeling. The captain has said too much, or he has said too little, and I'm bound to say that I require an explanation of his words. You don't, you say, like this cruise. Now, why?"
I was engaged, sir, on what we call sealed orders. Sail this ship for that gentleman where he should bid me, said the captain. So far, so good. But now I find that every man before the mast knows more than I do. I don't call that fair now, do you?
No, said Dr. Livesey, I don't.
Next, said the captain, I learn we are going after treasure. Here from my own hands, mind you. Now, treasure is ticklish work. I don't like treasure voyages on any account, and I don't like them above all when they are secret. And when, beg your pardon, Mr. Trelawney, the secret has been told to the parrot. Silver's parrot? Asked the squire. It's a way of speaking, said the captain. Blabbed, I mean. It's my belief neither of you gentlemen know what you're about. But I'm telling you the why of it. Life or death. A close run.
That is all clear, and I dare say true enough, replied Dr. Livesey. We take the risk, but we are not so ignorant as you believe us. Next, you say you don't like the crew. Are they not good seamen?
I don't like them, sir, returned Captain Smollett, and I think I should have had the choosing in my own hands, if you go to that.
Perhaps you should, replied the doctor. My friend should perhaps have taken you along with him. But the slight, if there be one, was unintentional. And you don't like Mr. Arrow?
I don't, sir. I believe he's a good seaman, but he's too free with the crew to be a good officer. A mate should keep himself to himself. Shouldn't drink with the men before the mast.
Do you mean he drinks? Cried the squire.
No, sir, replied the captain. Only that he's too familiar.
Well, now, and the short and long of it, Captain? Asked the doctor. Tell us what you want.
Well, gentlemen, are you determined to go on this cruise?
Like iron, answered the squire.
Very good, said the captain. Then, as you heard me very patiently saying things that I could not prove, hear me a few words more. They are putting the powder and the arms in the forehold. Now, you have a good place under the cabin. Why not put them there? First point. Then, you'll bring 4 of your own people with you. And they tell me some of them are to be berthed forward. Why not give them the berths here, beside the cabin? Second point.
Any more? Asked Mr. Trelawney.
One more, said the captain. There's been too much blabbing already.
Far too much, agreed the doctor.
I'll tell you what I've heard myself, continued Captain Smollett, that you have a map of an island. And there's crosses on the map to show where treasure is. That the island lies.
Then he named the latitude and longitude exactly. I never told that, cried the squire. To a soul!
The hands know it, sir, returned the captain.
Livesey, that must have been you or Hawkins, cried the squire. It doesn't much matter who it was, replied the doctor, and I could see that neither he nor the captain paid much regard to Mr. Trelawney's protestations. Neither did I, to be sure. He was so loose a talker, yet in this case I believe he was really right, and that nobody had told the situation of the island.
Well, gentlemen, continued the captain, I don't know who has this map, but I make it a point. It shall be kept secret even from me and Mr. Arrow. Otherwise, I ask you to let me resign.
I see, said the doctor. You wish us to keep this matter dark, and to make a garrison of the stern part of the ship, manned with my friend's own people, and provided with all of the arms and powder on board. In other words, you fear a mutiny.
Sir, said Captain Smollett, with no intention to take offence, I deny your right to put words into my mouth. No, Captain, sir. Would be justified in going to sea at all, if he had ground enough to say that. As for Mr. Arrow, I believe him thoroughly honest. Some of the men are the same, all may be, for what I know. But I am responsible for the ship's safety, and the life of every man jack aboard of her. I see things going, as I think, not quite right, and I ask you to take certain precautions, or let me resign my berth. And that's all.
Captain Smollett, began the doctor with a smile, did you ever hear the fable of the mountain and the mouse? You will excuse me, I dare say, but you remind me of that fable. When you came in here, I'll stake my wig. You meant more than this.
Doctor, said the captain, you're smart. When I came in here, I meant to get discharged. I had no thought that Mr. Trelawney would hear a word. No more I would, cried the squire. Had Livesey not been here, I should have seen you to the deuce. As it is, I have heard you. I will do as you desire, but I think the worse of you. That's as you please, sir, said the captain. You will find I do my duty.
And with that, he took his leave. Trelawney, said the doctor, contrary to all my notions, I believed you have managed to get 2 honest men on board with you. That man and John Silver.
Silver, if you like, cried the squire. But as for that intolerable humbug, I declare I think his conduct unmanly, unsailorly, and downright un-English.
Well, says the doctor, we shall see. When we came on deck, the men had begun already to take out the arms and powder, yo-hoing at their work while the captain and Mr. Arrow stood by, superintending. The new arrangement was quite to my liking. The whole schooner had been overhauled. 6 berths had been made astern out of what had been the after part of the main hold, and this set of cabins was only joined to the galley and forecastle by a sparred passage on the port side. It had been originally meant that the captain, Mr. Arrow, Hunter, Joyce, the doctor, and the squire were to occupy these 6 berths. Now, Redruth and I were to get 2 of them, and Mr. Arrow and the captain were to sleep on deck in the companion, which had been enlarged on each side, till you might almost have called it a roundhouse. Very low it was still, of course, but there was room to swing 2 hammocks, and even the mate seemed pleased with the arrangement. Even he, perhaps, had been doubtful as to the crew, but that is only guess. For as you shall hear, we had not long the benefit of his opinion. We were all hard at work, changing the powder in the berths, when the last man or 2 and Long John came along with them, came off in a shore boat. The cook came up the side like a monkey for cleverness, and as soon as he saw what was doing,
"So ho, mates," said he. "What's this?"
We're changing the powders of the powders, Jack," answers one.
"What? By the powers," cried Long John. "If we do, we miss the morning tide." "My orders," said the captain shortly. "You may go below, my man. Hands will want supper."
"Aye, aye, sir," answered the cook, and touching his forelock, he disappeared at once in the direction of the galley. "That's a good man, Captain," said the doctor.
"Very likely, sir," replied Captain Smollett. "Easy with that man. Easy."
He ran on to the fellows who were shifting the powder, and then suddenly observing me examining the swivel we carried amidships, a long brass 9.
"Here, you, ship's boy," he cried. "Out of there! Off with you to the cook and get some work."
And then, as I was hurrying off, I heard him say quite loudly to the doctor,
"I'll have no favorites on my ship."
I assure you, I was quite of the squire's way of thinking, and hated the captain deeply. It's unfortunate because the captain is probably, from the look of things, the least suspicious person on this cruise. But we'll have to see how that continues to shake out. All right, we've got about 10 minutes till ads, so let's try and get through one more chapter, and we'll see how this will leave us continuing on with Chapter 10, The Voyage. All that night, we were in a great bustle getting things stowed in their place, and boatfuls of the squire's friends, Mr. Blandley and the like, are coming off to wish him a good voyage and a safe return. Nope, hang on. Having a bit of a hiccup here. Come on, OBS, Comcast, both of you. It would be fantastic if you cooperated. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Stop dropping frames, have good connection, all is well. Alright. Well, let's take back from the top. All that night we were in a great bustle, getting things stowed in their place, and boatfuls of the squire's friends, Mr. Blandley and the like, coming off to wish him a good voyage and a safe return. We never had a knight at the Admirable Benbow. I'm doing it again. The Admirable Benbow. Wow. We never had a night at the Admiral Benbow when I had half the work, and I was dog-tired when, a little before dawn, the boatswain sounded his pipe and the crew began to man the capstan bars. I might have been twice as wary, yet I would not have left the deck. All was so new and interesting to me. The brief commands, the shrill note of the whistle, the men bustling to their places in the glimmer of the ship's lanterns. "Now, Barbecue, tip us a stave," cried one voice.
The old one!
Cried another.
Aye, mates,
said Long John, who was standing by, with his crutch under his arm, and at once broke out in air and words I knew well.
15 men on the dead man's chest.
And then the whole crew bore chorus, "Yo ho ho," and a bottle of rum. And at the third ho, drove the bars before them with a will. Even at that exciting moment, it carried me back to the old Admiral Benbow in a second, and I seemed to hear the voice of the captain piping in the chorus. But soon the anchor was short up. Soon it was hanging, dripping at the bows. Soon the sails began to draw, and the land and shipping to flit by on either side, and before I could lie down to snatch an hour of slumber, the Hispaniola had begun her voyage to the Isle of Treasure. I am not going to relate that voyage in detail. It was fairly prosperous. The ship proved to be a good ship. The crew were capable seamen, and the captain thoroughly understood his business. But before we came to the length of Treasure Island, 2 or 3 things had happened which require to be known. Mr. Arrow, first of all, turned out even worse than the captain had feared. He had no command among the men, and people did what they pleased with him. But that was by no means the worst of it. For after a day or 2 at sea, he began to appear on deck with hazy eyes, red cheeks, stuttering tongue, and other marks of drunkenness. Time after time he was ordered below in disgrace. Sometimes he fell and cut himself. Sometimes he lay all day long in his little bunk at one side of the companion. Sometimes for a day or 2 he would be almost sober and attended to his work, at least passably. In the meantime, we could never make out where he got the drink. That was the ship's mystery. Watch him as we pleased, we could do nothing to solve it. And when we asked him to his face, he would only laugh if he were drunk. If he were sober, deny solemnly that he ever tasted anything but water. He was not only useless as an officer, and a bad influence amongst the men, but it was plain that, at this rate, he must soon kill himself outright. So nobody was much surprised, or very sorry, when, one dark night, with a head sea, he disappeared entirely, and was seen no more.
"Overboard!"
said the captain.
"Well, gentlemen, that saves the trouble of putting him in irons."
But there we were, without a mate, and it was necessary, of course, to advance one of the men. The boatswain, Job Anderson, was the likeliest man aboard, and though he kept his old title, he served in a way his mate. Mr. Trelawney had followed the sea, and his knowledge made him very useful, for he often took a watch himself in easy weather. And the coxswain, Israel Hands, was a careful, wily old experienced seaman who could be trusted at a pinch with almost anything. He was a great confidant of Long John Silver, and so the mention of his name leads me on to speak of our ship's cook, Barbecue, as the men called him. Aboard ship he carried his crutch by a lanyard round his neck, to have both hands as free as possible. It was something to see him wedge the foot of the crutch against the bulkhead, and propped against it, yielding to every movement of the ship, get on with his cooking like someone safe ashore. Still more strange was it to see him in the heaviest of weather cross the deck. He had a line or 2 rigged up to help him across the widest spaces. Long John's earrings, they were called. And he would hand himself from one place to another, now using the crutch, now trailing it alongside by the lanyard as quickly as another man could walk. Yet some of the men who had sailed with him before expressed their pity to see him so reduced.
"He's no common man, Barbecue,"
said the coxswain to me.
"He had good school in his young days, and speaks like a book when so minded and brave. There's nothing alongside of Long John. Seen him grapple 4 and knock the heads together, him unarmed."
All the crew respected and even obeyed him. He had a way of talking to each and doing everybody some particular service. To me, he was unweariedly kind, and always glad to see me in the galley, which he kept as clean as a new pin, the dishes hanging up burnished and his parrot in a cage in one corner.
"Come away, Hawkins," he'd say. "Come and have a yarn with John. Nobody more welcome than yourself, my son. Sit you down and hear the news. Here's Captain Flint. I calls my parrot Captain Flint, after the famous buccaneer. Here's Captain Flint, predicting success to our voyage. Wasn't you, Captain?"
And the parrot would say with great rapidity, "Pieces of 8, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, till you wondered that it was not out of breath, or till John threw his handkerchief over the cage.
"Now, that bird," he'd say, "is maybe 200 years old, Hawkins. They live forever, mostly. And if anybody's seen more wickedness, it must be the devil himself. She sailed with England, the great Captain England, the pirate. She'd been at Madagascar, at Malabar, at Suriname, and Providence, and Portobello. But she was at the fishing up on the wrecked plate ships. It's there she learned pieces of 8, and little wonder, 350,000 of them, Hawkins. She was at the bar in the Viceroy of the Indies out of Goa. She was. And look at her, you would think she was a baby. But she smelled powder, didn't you, Captain?"
"Stand by to go about," the parrot would scream.
"Ha ha, she's a handsome craft, she is,"
the cook would say, and give her sugar from his pocket. And the bird would peck at the bars and swear straight on, passing belief for wickedness.
"There," John would add, "you can't touch pitch and not be mucked, lad. Here's this poor old innocent bird of mine swearing blue fire, and none the wiser, you may later that. She swear the same, in manner of speaking, before chaplain."
And John would touch his forelock with a solemn way he had that made me think he was the best of men. In the meantime, the squire and Captain Smollett were still on pretty distant terms with one another. The squire made no bones about the matter. He despised the captain. The captain, on his part, never spoke but when he was spoken to, and then sharp and short and dry, and not a word wasted. He owned, when driven into a corner, that he seemed to have been wrong about the crew, that some of them were as brisk as he wanted to see, and all behaved fairly well. As for the ship, he had taken a downright fancy to her.
"She'll lie a point nearer the wind than a man has a right to expect of his own married wife, sir. But," he would add, "all I say is, we're not home again, and I don't like the cruise."
The squire at this would turn away and march up and down the deck, chin in air. "A trifle more of that, man," he would say, "and I shall explode." We had some heavy weather, which only proved the qualities of the Hispaniola. Every man on board seemed well content, and they must have been hard to please if they had been otherwise, for it is my belief that there was never a ship's company so spoiled since Noah put to sea. Double grog was going on the least excuse. There's duff on odd days, as for instance. If the squire heard it was any man's birthday, and always a barrel of apples, standing abroached in the waist for anyone to help himself that had a fancy.
"Never knew good cover yet," the captain said to Dr. Livesey. "Spoiled forecastle hands make devils. That's my belief."
But good did come of the apple barrel, as you shall hear. For if it had not been for that, we should have had no note of warning, and might all have perished by the hand of treachery. This was how it came about. We had run up the trades to get the wind of the island we were after. I am not allowed to be more plain. And now we were running down for it with a bright lookout day and night. It was about the last day of our outward voyage by the largest computation. Some time that night, or latest before noon of the morrow, we should sight the treasure island. We were headed south-southwest, and had a steady breeze abeam and a quiet sea. The Hispaniola rolled steadily, dipping her bowsprit now and then, with a whiff of spray. All was drawing low and aloft. Everyone was in the bravest spirits because we were now so near an end of the first part of our adventure. Now, just after sundown, when all my work was over and I was on my way to my berth, it occurred to me that I should like an apple. I ran on deck. The watch was all forward, looking out for the island. The man at the helm was watching the luff of the sail and whistling away gently to himself. And that was the only sound, excepting the swish of the sea against the bows and around the sides of the ship. In I got bodily into the apple barrel and found there was scarce an apple left. But sitting down there in the dark with what with the sound of the waters and the rocking movement of the ship, I had either fallen asleep or was on the point of doing so when a heavy man sat down with rather a clash close by. The barrel shook as he leaned his shoulders against it, and I was just about to jump up when the man began to speak. It was Silver's voice. Before I had heard a dozen words, I would not have shown myself for all the world. I lay there, trembling and listening, in the extreme of fear and curiosity. For from these dozen words I understood that the lives of all the honest men aboard depended upon me alone. All right, that brings us to the end of Chapter 8, and a bit of a cliffhanger there. We see that there's a conspiracy afoot, and Silver seems to be the one that's pushing things along. For all the goodwill he's built up, and all that Hawkins seems to like him, there's something of stir. But we'll have to wait to hear exactly what it is until we return from ads, because that's just what it has to be, sadly. So, let's go ahead and take a few minutes, take a short break, stand up, stretch your legs, top up your drinks, attend to your fuzzy friends, and we'll be back in just a few minutes to continue with Treasure Island. All right, we are back. So, the adventure's underway. The cruise to Treasure Island is going apace. They lost the mate, but no one really liked him anyway. But as Hawkins went up for a bit of a midnight snack, found himself stuck in a barrel, and before he hobbled out, had a bit of a surprise, as one of his least expected individuals began to be showing his colors. Now, we, having the benefit of the reader's perspective and generally, I'm assuming, being familiar with the story, saw this coming leagues away. But, for the benefit of the narrative, let's see how things shape up here. So, Chapter 11. What I Heard in the Apple Barrel.
No, not I, said Silver. Flint was captain. I'm quartermaster, along with my timber leg. Same broadside I lost my leg, old Pew lost his deadlights. Was a master surgeon, him that amputated me. Out of college and all, Latin by the bucket and whatnot. He was hanged like a dog, and sun-dried like the rest at Corso Castle. That was Roberts's men, I was. And come to changing names of their ships, Royal Fortune and so on. Now, well, the ship was christened, so let us stay. I see us. It was the Cassandra that brought us all safe home from Malabar after England took the Viceroy of the Indies. So it was with the old Walrus, Flint's old ship, as I seen her muck with her red blood and fit to sink with gold.
Ah! Cried another voice, one of the youngest hand on board, and evidently full of admiration.
He was the flower of the flock, it was Flint. Davis was a man too, by all accounts, said Silver, and I was sailing along with him. First with England, then with Flint. That's my story. Now, here on my own account, in a manner of speaking, I laid by 900 safe from England, and 2,000 after Flint. That ain't bad for a man before the mast, all safe in bank. 'Tain't earning now, it's saving, does it? You may lay to that. Where's all England's men now? I don't know. Where's Flint's? Why, most of them aboard here. I'm glad to get the duff. Begging before that. Some on them. Old Pew, as he lost his sight, might have thought shame spends £1,200 in a year. Like a lord in Parliament. Where's he now? Well, he's dead now, and under hatches. But for 2 years before that, shiver my timbers, the man was starving. He begged, he stole, he cut throats, and he starved at that by the powers. Well, it ain't much use after all, said the young seaman. Tain't much use for fools, you may lay to it. That, no nothing, cried Silver. But now, you look here. You're young, you are. You're as smart as paint. I see that when I set my eyes on you. I'll talk to you like a man.
You may imagine how I felt when I heard this abominable old rogue addressing another in the very same words of flattery he had used to myself. I think, if I had been able, that I would have killed him through the barrel. Meanwhile, he ran on, little supposing he was overheard.
It is about gentlemen of fortune. They live rough. They risk swinging. But they eat and drink like fighting cocks. When a cruise is done, it's hundreds of pounds instead of hundreds of farthings in their pockets. Now, the most goes for rum and a good fling, and to sea again in their shirts. That's not the course I lay. Puts it all away. Some here, some there, and none too much anywheres. By reason of suspicion. I'm 50, mark you. Once I get back from this cruise, I set up gentlemen in earnest. Time enough, too, says you. But I've lived easy in the meantime. Never denied myself in nothing heart desires. Slept soft, and ain't dainty all my days but when at sea. How'd I begin? For the mast, like you. Well, said the other, but all the other money's gone now, ain't it? You daren't show face in Bristol after this? Why, where might you suppose it was? Asked Silver derisively. At Bristol, in banks and places, answered his companion. It were, said the cook. It were when we weighed anchor. But my old missus has it all by now. And Spyglass is sold lease and goodwill and rigging, and the old girl's off to meet me. I would tell you where, for I trust you. It made jealousy among the mates. And can you trust your missus? Asked the other. Gentlemen of fortune, returned the cook, usually trust little among themselves. And right they are, you may lay to it. But I've a way with me. I have. When a mate brings a slip on his cable, and just knows me, I mean, it won't be in the same word with old John. There's some that was feared of Pew, some was feared of Flint, but Flint, his own self, was feared of me. Feared he was, and proud. They was the roughest crew afloat. Was Flint's. The devil himself would have been feared to go up to sea with him. Well, now, I tell you, I'm not a boasting man. You seen yourself how easy I keep company. When I was a quartermaster, lambs wasn't the word for Flint's old buccaneers. You may be sure of yourself in old John's ship. Well, I tell you now, replied the lad, I didn't half a quarter like the job till I had this talk with you, John. But here's my hand on it now. A brave lad you were. Smart, too, answered Silver, shaking hands so heartily that all the barrel shook. And a finer figurehead for a gentleman of fortune I never clapped my eyes on.
By this time, I had begun to understand the meaning of their terms. By a gentleman of fortune, they plainly meant neither more nor less than a common pirate. The little scene that I had overheard was the last act in the corruption of one of the honest hands. Perhaps the last one left aboard, but on this point I was soon to be relieved. For Silver, giving a little whistle, the third man strolled up and sat down by the party. Dick's square, said Silver. Oh, I know Dick was square, returned the voice of the coxswain, Israel Hands. He's no fool, is Dick. And he turned his squid spat. Look here, he went on. Here's what I want to know, Barbecue. How long we going to stand off and on like a blessed bumboat? I've had most enough of Captain Smollett. He's hazed me long enough by thunder. Going to that cabin I do, I want their pickles and their wines and that. Israel, said Silver, your head ain't much account, nor ever was. But you're able to hear, I reckon. Leastways, your ears is big enough. Now, here's what I say. You'll bust forward, you'll live hard, you'll speak soft. You'll keep sober till I give the word. But may you lay to that, my son. Well, I don't say no, do I? Growled the coxswain. What I say is, when? That's what I say. When? By the powers, cried Silver. When now? If you want to know, I'll tell you when. The last moment I can manage, and that's when. Here's the first-rate seaman, Captain Smollett. Sails the blessed ship for us. Here's this squire and doctor with a map and such. I don't know where it is, do I? No more to you, says you. Well then, this squire and doctor shall find the stuff and help us to get it aboard by the powers. Then we'll see. I was sure you all sons of double Dutchmen, I'd have Captain Smollett navigate us halfway back again before I struck. We're all seamen aboard here, I should think, said the lad Dick. Oh, the lad. What? We're all seamen aboard here, I should think, said the lad Dick. We're all forecastle hands, you mean, snapped Silver. We can steer a course, produce to set one. That's what all you gentlemen split on, first and last. If I had my way, I'd have Captain Smollett work us back into the trades at least. We'd have no blessed miscalculations and a spoonful of water a day. But I know the sort you are. I'll finish with them at the island. As soon as Blunt's on board, and a pity it is. But you're never happy till you're drunk. Split my sides, I've a sick heart to sail with the likes of you. Easy, old Long John, cried Israel. Who's a crossing to you? Why,
How many tall ships think you now have I been seen laid aboard? How many brisk lads drying in the sun at execution dock? Cried Silver. And all this same hurry and hurry and hurry, you hear me? I've seen a thing or two at sea. I have. You only lay your course and pint to windward. You'd ride in carriages, you would. But not you. I know you. You'll have your mouth full of rum tomorrow and go hang. Everybody knows you're kind of a chaplain, John. There's others could hand and steer as well as you, said Israel. They liked a bit of fun, they did. Wasn't so hard and dry, nohow, but took their fling like jolly companions ever won. So, said Silver, well, where are they now? Pugh was that sort. He died a beggar man. Flint was. He died of rum at Savannah. They was a sweet crew, they was. Well, where are they? But, asked Dick. When do we lay him athwart? What are we to do with him anyhow? There's the man for me, cried the cook admiringly. That's what I call business. Well, what'd you think? Put him ashore like maroons? That would have been England's way. Come down like that much pork? That would have been Flint's or Billy Bones's. Billy was the man for that, said Israel. Dead men don't bite, says he. Well, he's dead now himself. He knows the long and short on it now. If ever a rough hand come to port, it was Billy.
I did this to myself. Give the pirates gravelly voices. Yeah.
That you are, said Silver. Rough and ready. Mark you here, I'm an easy man. Quite the gentleman, says you. This time it's serious. Duty is duty, mates. And give my vote. Death. When I'm in Parliament and riding in my coach, I don't want none of these sea laws in the cabin coming home unlooked for, like the devil at prayers. Wait, is what I say. When the time comes, let her rip. Drown, cries the coxswain. You're a man. You'll say so, Israel, when you see, said Silver. On one thing I claim Trelawney. I'll wring his calf's head off his body with these hands, Dick. He added, breaking off. You just jump up, a sweet lad, and give me an apple. Whip my pipe like.
You may fancy the terror I was in. I should have leaped out and run for it if I had found the strength, but my limbs and heart alike misgave me. I heard Dick begin to rise, and then someone seemingly stopped him, and the voice of the hands exclaimed,
Oh, stow that. Don't you get sucked into that bilge, John. Let's go have a go with the room. Dick, said Silver, I trust you. I have a gauge on the keg, mind. Here's the key. You feel a panicking and bring it up.
Terrified as I was, I could not help thinking to myself, this must have been how Mr. Arrow got the strong waters that destroyed him. Dick was gone but a little while. And during his absence, Israel spoke straight on in the cook's ear. It was but a word or two that I could catch, and yet I gathered some important news. For, besides other scraps that tended to the same purpose, this whole clause was audible.
Not another man of them would be John.
Hence, there were still faithful men on board. When Dick returned, one after another of the trio took the pannikin and drank. One to luck, another with a "Here's to old Flint," and Silver himself saying in a kind of song, "Here's to our sails. Hold your luff, plenty of prizes and plenty of duff." Just then, a sort of brightness fell upon me in the barrel, and looking up, I found the moon had risen, and was silvering the mizzen top and shining white on the luff of the foresail. And almost at the same time, the voice of the lookout shouted, "Land ho!" All right. So, the conspiring and plotting has gone fully hand in hand, and there's at least a few honest sailors left. But we know a solid chunk of them are just waiting for their opportunity, led by Long John Silver himself, who's got a bit of a history running with some of the nastiest pirates to have sailed the seas. Hang on, cat's doing something under the desk. What are you doing? What you doing down there? Huh? Huh? Yeah. Yeah, got you, Zoe. Ha ha ha. Let's... All right, so let's see. How much do we have in the part? Oh, shit, okay, this is the last chapter of the part already. But I do rather like this pacing, so we're probably just gonna have a short night of it tonight. Because it just feels right for this book to have a nice, steady pacing. And these parts are nice and bite-sized. We'll ruin it if we go over. So, let's get through one more chapter tonight, as they're coming up on the island, before or during the betrayal. Chapter 12, Council of War. There was a great rush of feet across the deck. I could hear people tumbling up from the cabin and the forecastle, and slipping in an instant outside my barrel, I dived behind the foresail, made a double towards the stern, and came out upon the open deck in time to join Hunter and Dr. Livesey in the rush for the weather bow. There, all hands were already congregated. A belt of fog had lifted almost simultaneously with the appearance of the moon. Away to the southwest of us, we saw two low hills, about a couple of miles apart, and rising behind one of them, a third and higher hill whose peak was still buried in the fog. All three seemed sharp and conical in figure. So much I saw almost in a dream, for I had not yet recovered from my horrid fear of a minute or two before. And then I heard the voice of Captain Smollett issuing orders. The Hispaniola was laid a couple of points nearer the wind, and now sailed a course that would just clear the island on the east.
"Now, men," said the captain,
when all was sheeted home,
"has any of you ever seen that land ahead?" "I have, sir," said Silver. "I've watered there with a trader I was cooking." "The anchorage is on the south, behind an island, I fancy?"
asked the captain.
"Yes, sir. Scouting Island, they calls it. It were a main place for pirates once, and a hand we had on board knowed all the names for it. That hill in the northland they call it the foremast hill. There are 3 hills and a low running southward, 4 main and missing, sir. The main, that's the big one, with the cloud on it. They usually calls the spyglass, by reason of a lookout they kept when they was in the anchorage cleaning. Whereas there they clean their ship, sir, asking your pardon. I have a chart here," says Captain Smollett. "See if that's the place."
Long John's eyes burned in his head as he took the chart, but by the fresh look of the paper, I knew he was doomed to disappointment. This was not the map we found in Billy Bones' chest, but an accurate copy, complete in all things. Names and heights and soundings, with the single exception of the red crosses and the written notes. Sharp as must have been his annoyance, Silver had the strength of mind to hide it.
"Yes, sir," said he. "This is the spot, to be sure. It's prettily drawed out. But I done that, I wonder. The pirates are too ignorant, I reckon. Ah, here it is. Captain Kidd's anchorage. Just the name my shipmate called it. There's a strong current runs along the south, then away north, up the west coast. Right you was, sir," says he, "to haul your wind and keep the weather of the island leastways, if such was your intention, as to enter and careen. There ain't no better place for that in these waters." "Thank you, my man," says Captain Smollett. "I'll ask you later on to give us help. You may go."
I was surprised at the coolness with which John avowed his knowledge of the island, and I own I was half frightened when I saw him drawing nearer to myself. He did not know, to be sure, that I had overheard this counsel from the apple barrel, and yet I had by this time taken such a horror of his cruelty, duplicity, and power that I could scarce conceal a shudder when he laid his hand upon my arm. "Ha ha!" says he. "This here is a sweet spot, this island. A sweet spot for a land to get ashore on. You'll bathe, and you'll climb trees, and you'll hunt goats, you will. And get aloft on them hills like a goat yourself. Why, makes me young again. I'm gonna forget my timber leg I was. It's a pleasant thing to be young and have 10 toes. But you may lay to that. If you want to go a bit of exploring, you just ask old John, and he'll put up a snack for you to take along." And clapping me in the friendliest way upon the shoulder, he hobbled off, forward, and went below. Captain Smollett, the squire, and Dr. Livesey were talking together on the quarter deck, and anxious as I was to tell them my story, I durst not interrupt them openly. While I was still casting about in my thoughts to find some probable excuse, Dr. Livesey called me to his side. He had left his pipe below, and, being a slave to tobacco, had meant that I should fetch it. But as soon as I was near enough to speak and not be overheard, I broke immediately. "Doctor, let me speak. Get the captain and the squire down to the cabin, and then make some pretense to send for me. I have terrible news." The doctor changed countenance a little, but next moment he was master of himself. "Thank you, Jim," he said quite loudly. "That was all I wanted to know," as if he had asked me a question. And with that he turned on his heel and rejoined the other two. They stood together for a little, and though none of them started, or raised his voice, or so much as whistled, it was plain enough that Dr. Livesey had communicated my request. But the next thing I heard was the captain giving an order to Job Anderson, and all hands were piped on deck. "My lads," said Captain Smollett, "I have a word to say to you. This land we have sighted is the place we have been sailing for. Mr. Trelawney, being a very open-handed gentleman, as we all know, has just asked me a word or two, and I was able to tell him that every man on board had done his duty, alow and aloft, as I never asked to see it done better. Why, he and I and the doctor are going below to the cabin to drink your health and luck. And you'll have a grog served out for you to drink our health and luck. I'll tell you what I think of this. I think it handsome, and if you think as I do, you'll give a good sea cheer for the gentleman that does it." The cheer followed. That was a matter of course, but it rang out so full and hearty that I confess I could hardly believe these same men were plotting for our blood.
"One more cheer for Captain Smollett!"
cried Long John when the first had subsided. And this was also given with a will. On the top of that, the 3 gentlemen went below, and not long after word was sent forward that Jim Hawkins was wanted in the cabin. I found them all 3 seated round the table, a bottle of Spanish wine and some raisins before them, and the doctor smoking away with his wig on his lap, and that I knew was a sign that he was agitated. The stern window was open, for it was a warm night, and you could see the moon shining behind on the ship's wake.
"Now, Hawkins," said the squire, "you have something to say. Speak up."
I did as I was bid, and as short as I could make it, I told the whole details of Silver's conversation. Nobody interrupted me till I was done, nor did any one of the 3 of them make so much as a movement, but they kept their eyes upon my face from first to last. "Jim," said Dr. Livesey, "take a seat." And they made me sit down at the table beside them, poured me out a glass of wine, filled my hands with raisins, and all 3, one after the other, and each with a bow, drank my good health, and their service to me for my luck and courage. "Now, Captain," said the squire, "you were right, and I was wrong. I own myself an ass, and I await your orders." "No more ass than I, sir," returned the captain. "I never heard of a crew that meant a mutiny but what showed signs before, or any man that had an eye in his head to see the mischief and take steps according. But this crew," he added, "beats me." "Captain," said the doctor, "with your permission, that's Silver, a very remarkable man."
"He did look remarkably well from the yardarm, sir," returned the captain. "This is talk. This don't lead to anything. I see 3 or 4 points, and with Mr. Trelawney's permission, I'll name them.
You, sir, are the captain. It is for you to speak, says Mr. Trelawney grandly.
First point, began Mr. Smollett. We must go on, because we can't turn back. If I gave the word to go about, they would rise at once. Second point, we have time before us, at least until the treasure's found. Third point, there are faithful hands. Now, sir, it's got to come to blows sooner or later. What I propose is to take time by the forelock, as the saying is, and come to blows some fine day when they least expect it. We can count, I take it, on your own home servants, Mr. Trelawney.
That's upon myself, declared the squire.
3, reckoned the captain. Ourselves make 7, Captain and Hawkins here. Now, about the honest hands.
More likely Trelawney's own men, said the doctor, those he had picked up for himself before he lit on silver.
Nay.
Nay, replied the squire. Hans was one of mine.
I did think I could have trusted Hans,
added the captain. And to think that they're all Englishmen, broke out the squire. Sir, I could find it in my heart to blow the ship up.
Well, gentlemen, said the captain, best I can say is not much. We must lay to, if you please, and keep a bright lookout. It's trying on a man, I know. It would be pleasanter to come to blows. There's no help for it. If we know our men, lay to, and whistle for a wind. That's my view.
Jim here, said the doctor, can help us more than anyone. The men are not shy with him, and Jim isn't noticing that. Hawkins, I put prodigious faith in you, added the squire. I began to feel pretty desperate at this, for I felt altogether helpless. And yet, by an odd train of circumstances, it was indeed through me that safety came. In the meantime, talk as we pleased, there were only 7 out of the 26 on whom we knew we could rely. And out of these 7, 1 was a boy, so that the grown men on our side were 6 to their 19. All right, that brings us to the end of part 2, and we have for us part 3, My Shore Adventure. But that'll be for next time, because it just fits. We ran through about most of our time. So, it's been fun. A nice, entertaining little story. We're seeing the developments. It's not too complicated, not too complex, but still plenty of fun. The development, the plotting, the scheming, and just in the nick of time, a happenstance and circumstance and coincidence. Jim Hawkins has sussed out the plot. So, forewarned and forearmed are the honest seafarers, as well as the doctor and the squire, who have no real business being out and about on a ship. But yeah, absolutely, it is nice to just have a nice head-empty adventure. There's nothing wrong with that. Reading something just for the sake of it being fun, that's always welcome in my books. So, I guess we can take a moment now. We touched on it as we were in our intro, but when we started this, we had obviously no idea that the wonderful Tim Curry was going to be leaving us. And as we talked about earlier, this is one of the few books, properties that has the great distinction of having a fantastic Muppet adaptation. So, I can fully and wholeheartedly recommend taking some time for yourself this weekend, this week. Find yourself a copy, or I'm not sure where it's streaming or what platform or wherever it might be, but find yourself Muppet Treasure Island and enjoy the performance of the late, great Tim Curry. He really nailed it. And, I mean, he nailed just about everything he was ever in. So, give him a proper send-off, and treat yourself to one of the greats in his very element. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and wrap up a little bit early tonight. Let's set a bookmark here. Our next reading is going to be tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern. We are returning in our unarchived series back full circle. We've finished our adventures through space and dragon times and horror, with Colorado just being scary. Thank you very much, Mr. Stephen King. And all sorts of things. And we're coming back around to Middle-earth. That's right. Tomorrow we're starting The Two Towers, the second of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Our very first unarchived series was The Fellowship of the Ring. So, this one should be good. Well, I mean, it's obviously good. It's Tolkien. But we should have fun with it. So, I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you are too. That'll be tomorrow, and probably for a few weeks. If I remember right, the Fellowship was 5 or 6 weeks. So, we've probably got about a solid month or so of ahead of us. And that is certainly not a problem. All right. So, we'll go through our usual wrap-up here. We can get out of our reading nook. As always, thank you so much for joining us tonight in our continued reading, this time of Treasure Island. We always stream both on YouTube and on Twitch. If you haven't yet, YouTube is a fantastic way to catch up on our VODs. We have all of the recordings for all of our books and readings going back to the very beginning of the channel. So, if you haven't yet, a subscription to the channel on YouTube and a like on any of our streams is a fantastic way to let the algorithm know that we do some fun things around here and maybe to send some new friends our way. If you're on Twitch, thanks for joining us. This is where most of our interaction and chat happens. So if you'd like to feel like you're part of the party, this is the way to do it. If you'd like to support us on Twitch, all you need to do is follow the channel, really. That lets me know you like what you're doing, and it lets you know when we go live with good old-fashioned notifications. All right, so that'll be where we wrap up for tonight. Let's see who is out there tonight. It is Friday, so I think we, as is tradition at this point, we can and should find our friends over at Fanfic Friday. I know we went into Slack last week, so let's see who else we can go to. Oh, is it Transformers night? Oh, goody. And that is another thing. It's been a rough week. We lost Dolly, we lost Tim Curry, and we lost the voice of Optimus Prime. You know what, for that, we're going to Sealy. Alright, so, we're going to raid out. So, I hope everyone has fun tonight with... Yeah, losing Peter Cullen hurt a lot. August was just not friendly. Not friendly at all. Can we please just move on? We can keep going. If we can make it to September, maybe it'll be okay. Maybe. Anyway, we're going to raid out to Sealy tonight. Gankao, who is hosting one of the main hosts, or one of the hosts of Fanfic Friday, who we guest host with every once in a while, and generally is a good egg. So, be sure to give them our very best as we raid out, and I hope you have a good time tonight. All right. Off we go. Until next time. Here, anyway. I hope you guys had a good time and a good night.